Hey, YouTube, how is it going? I hope all is well. Oh boy, we got some stuff to talk about today. Um, this one is going to be more of a kind of like an apology, but I also want to compound on a few things. I know that many of you have not entered the chat yet. Maybe many of you will not. I do not know, but I guess I wanted to get some of the bad news out of the way first, I guess, because somebody kind of reminded me of something that I didn't quite think about. This amp is currently being built with 110 volts in mind. The transformer that I used is from another amp that I had built prior, and I decided that I did not want to use that particular transformer after all for that amp. I wanted to do something a little bit different. So, imagine having cut the leads short anyway. They're not eliminated completely, but I cut the leads a bit anyway, so that I could utilize the 110 or slash 120 volt portion of it only. And I'm going to there we go. I'm going to turn that up just a little bit, just a skosh. And that is kind of a, now it's just too much. Hold on. There we go. Split the difference. Which is kind of a bummer because I realize now that there's at least one or two individuals that are from outside of America that are interested in this amp. Internet Money, I believe, is one of them, and I'm pretty certain he's going to be a little upset. I don't know how I can create some sort of a consolation out of that. It's not that the leads are missing. They're just not there and wired in. And it's not on a switch or anything like that. So, I mean, if you wanted to get in there and rip part of it apart, yeah, you could do it. You could modify it, but I don't think it's practical at this point. It was one of those things I never anticipated that I just didn't anticipate that. So that is going to be, I think, a thing. I don't know. Some people's odds maybe just got better. Don't worry so much. There are going to be more of these. I kind of feel like this is just going to start to be a thing. Maybe not so much giveaway, but more of the raffle types, thing. But this one, yeah, that was kind of a bummer on my part. So I biffed it in that regard. So those of you who are on the other side of the pond, you're going to either have to find a way to dumb down your 220 volts or 240 or whatever the heck it is, and or move back to the States. Why wouldn't you want to be here anyway? So yeah. Let me just do something here. I got my notification, so I know I'm live, but let's see here. I'm going to turn that down. I don't know if there's any way to tell. Looks like there's at least one person watching. Maybe. I don't know if the chat's working proper or not. It doesn't. Hold on, let me see here. Let me just talk to myself here and see if it's actually connected and doing what it's supposed to do. I don't know if it is or not. It's one of those things where I just never know. So it appears maybe. Helps if I hit the send button. Oh, yeah, no, it's working. Yeah, there's just nobody here. Nobody gives a crap. That's fine. Andy is doing a live thing right now, so it's, him doing, I think he's playing a video game or something like that with his girlfriend at the moment, or his wife. His better half. How's that? But in either case, that was an update that I needed to get out right off the bat. So that might change the game just a little bit. So if you're out of the country and you don't want to have to deal with a 110 volt amplifier, this might not be the game for you. Internet Money, I apologize. Give me hit me up. You know how to get in touch with me. We can talk some more. I know that some people have even offered to pay the shipping. Again, it was one of those things it's not the money. Like, realistically speaking, it's not the money. But at this point, I'm dedicated to having that transformer in there, which means I can't really just go back and change anything at this point in time. And while the leads are accessible, it is one of those things where it will uglify things. So yeah, you could potentially rewire it quite easily to work with 220 or something like that, but it's not really meant to. So I don't even have a way to test it at that voltage. I mean, I do have a 220 here, but I don't know how it works in the other countries. It's one of those things I'm going to have to work on here in the near future. It's duly noted, if you will. Some other things that kind of came to mind. I was talking about it briefly yesterday about how this kind of format here, this live thing slash, YouTube channel that shows how to build these things more thoroughly than some of the other ones, giving up the goods, realistically speaking, like giving away the secrets, how to actually do this stuff and stuff like that. I think that's kind of a new thing. It's up and coming. There's only a few channels that I know of that do it. Elams is one of them, where he actually shows you how he does it. But he doesn't really have a whole lot of videos displaying how his amps sound, kind of like this guy right here. But how do you put it? I kind of feel that this is going to be kind of the way of the future, and I don't want to, say that it was kind of me that did it. Obviously, there's Brad the Guitologist, Psionic Audio, Elams. There's several other channels that have been doing this. Headfirst even have been doing this kind of stuff for a while. Headfirst has since kind of moved away ever since he's kind of gained some ubiquity, or some star fame, if you will. He's not really doing too much more of the how-to stuff as much as he's doing like, hey, check out what we can do with this amp here. It's kind of part of what I'm going to be doing, sort of thing. I really like him. I think he's a cool cat. It's just he's outgrown, I think, where he was. And he's always been kind of moving in that direction anyway, and it's just kind of a bummer. Slightly Technical, go check him out. That dude is really, really freaking cool. His channel is growing really, really fast. His consistency is great. I think he's basically doing almost a video a day or something like that. And that's cool. He doesn't go quite as deep as maybe what Andy and I are possibly doing here, but, he kind of gives you what I would say is a good sense of, if you have no idea what the heck any of this stuff is, he gives you kind of a good sense as to, where ideas, like concept, like how to wrap your head around it kind of thing. I know that he worked for a company before doing more, I think he was like maybe an engineer, electrical engineer. Oh, I don't know what his role is exactly, but, doing things for other companies, and he's stepped away from that as best as I can tell. I think it was mainly because he was kind of over the politics of it all. Working for big business, because I do myself, it's my day job anyway. It's just weird how the politics are. I never quite understood the politics that well. I've always been kind of an outlier anyway in that regard. So I've never been like corporate kind of good in that regard. I talk too much. Maybe you can tell. I don't know. So there was that. And just the direction of the channel in general, I think we're going to kind of stick down this lane here. I've been talking with some of my friends and some, people. I get three kind of basic results, or three kind of answers, if you will, about what I should do. I really want to name my company Legacy. Now, there's a challenge with that because Steve Vai has his Legacy amp. Now, it's not exactly the name of the company, though. It's the name of the amp. The amp was actually made by Carvin. Now, I don't know how near and dear that is to Steve Vai. Now, I have a friend that has met Steve Vai, and he's like, he says that he's not like a close acquaintance, but, he knows and has met him, and he says that, despite how cool he appears to be, that, Steve Vai is not exactly the nicest guy in all regards. So he might not appreciate my naming. He may not, he may or may not be litigious. I don't know. So he's trying to steer me away and go with Luke Amplification, which my name is Luke, for those of you who do not know. So he's trying to steer me in that direction. Now the L that I do show on my amplifiers, the L that you have seen on my, things, that is, a rendition of my signature. That is actually my handwriting, and I've, converted into digital and got it so it looks nice in that regard. But I want to use that logo. I'm kind of settled on that, but it has no ties whatsoever to my channel currently, it's actually meant to be A/Tech, but the way I did the slash, it kind of looks like AV Tech, right? So with the slash on the A, it kind of looks like a V, Tech. I used to be an audio-visual technician, right? That was kind of the whole thing, right? So it was a way for me to do an A, a V, and a Tech without actually having a audio-visual tech or an AV tech or whatnot. I think that name was either already taken or something like that. So I was able to use A/Tech, and here we are, right? Everybody just calls me A-Tech, which is cool. I mean, it's an interesting name for a company. I guess, I don't know. So there's been a couple other people who as well have said, like, why don't you just go with A-Tech? It's a cool name, right? The problem is I don't really know I don't really want to try to rebrand. I'm not settled on anything yet. I don't have a storefront. I don't have the website created yet. As you probably have noticed, I'm not trying to sell anything to anybody yet. I'm just kind of showing you what I got, showing you what I'm doing, and trying to build interest in this channel. The biggest issue that I see moving forward, and I kind of mentioned this yesterday, is that because I do want to have a branded channel, if I go with Legacy, for instance, I'm obviously going to have to basically start from scratch. I don't know how that's going to look, how that's going to work. I've seen so many other boutique-y kind of, amplifier channels where the subscriber count, like even just this channel here, has more subscribers than some of these names that you have heard of. And it baffles my mind because obviously people are paying the kind of money for these things. So why wouldn't they be subscribed to them, right? So it shocks me a little bit. It's not that I care necessarily entirely about like subscribership or whatnot. I'm not begging for them. I want it to be natural because I want the people that come to my channel to actually want to be here. I kind of feel that's more important than just getting people to get on my list, if you will. And it's not even my list, but you know what I mean? Like, get on my channel and subscribe or whatnot. Like, you have to want to be here, obviously, because I talk too freaking much. So there is that. I don't know. But it is thoughts that I'm going to have to address here in the near future. So if I do decide to rebrand, my friend Brian is probably going to kill me because he's already gotten all the domains for me for Legacy and Luke Amplification and all that stuff. So I own like half a dozen domains for each rendition of that, not even considering the idea that A-Tech or A/Tech might even possibly become the brand. I don't think it needs to be. I don't know. I kind of feel like I'm lucky that I do have a small group of people that are not diehard, but you know what I mean? Like they support me, and I love that love, right? Everybody kind of loves that love. And it's really cool. I did subscribe to a few people recently because obviously it's, good to return some of that love. So, obviously Andy Lederman, he's got his thing going, YDNA. It's kind of his name backwards, but he uses a diode symbol in there with the Y. It's actually a cool logo, to be honest. The way he's done it out is really cool. He's got t-shirts and merch and stuff like that. And he's selling a couple different products. Now, I was considering it, and I was being pushed by a couple friends and whatnot to kind of create something similar to that where I produce something that I can sell. And for me, it was just like, I didn't want to turn into a warehouse. Like, I don't want to have to store a bunch of parts. I hand make the chassis myself. So it's like, I'd have to go out and buy several $1,000s worth of chassis, spend all that time and energy and money to build them, or cut them, drill them, all that fun stuff, and then possibly have them available for the world, right? I didn't want to do that, and I didn't want to have to go out and spend thousands of dollars on components to have sit around and possibly not sell or end up possibly putting in my own amps. I don't know. I am starting to build an arsenal of parts. I probably can build 3 or 4 amps right now, sans the chassis and perhaps a couple different transformers. I have some transformers available in my arsenal or sitting there ready to go, but it's for future ideas, future thoughts, and then just things that I was gonna go that direction and it just didn't work out, and I didn't end up using them for that project after all. So I can pretty much build like a lower wattage JCM 800 right now if I really wanted to. In that, it's something I could do. It's not what I'm gonna do, but in other news too, there has been kind of talk about Andy and I doing like a build off, if you want to call it that. It's not really a build off as much as it is a theme kind of thing. So obviously they've had the Great Guitar Build Off that's been going on for pretty much since the pandemic, so the last 5 or 6 years or something like that. And that turned out to be a pretty big hit. I don't think I'm going to be the purveyor of that by any chance or means. I don't honestly think that Andy and I are going to make that jump. But I think we might possibly start kind of a little trend of theme-based amps. I have an idea. I think it's going to be pretty cool. More or less, we decided that we're going to keep it somewhat simple. All the wiring has to be inside of tubing. That's the rule. So anything that's got a wire the wire has to run through tubing. That's basically the premise of it. The secondary aspect or rule, if you will, is that it has to be single-ended. So we're going to go single-ended. And then beyond that, there's really not much else to it, but more or less, it's more or less going to look like it's a single-channel, single-ended amplifier that is more or less steampunk themed, right? Everything's in copper tubing or something like that, some sort of tubing at the very least. I have an idea, and the reason I've been sitting on it for so darn long is that my idea is crazy. It's freaking crazy. Like, it would be insane to do it. I don't know if it will work, but I got an idea, and I'm gonna freaking run with it, and we're gonna see, and hopefully it will work. I am going to use a larger bottle for the output tube. I'm shooting for about 20 watts of output, right about 20 watts. So we're probably landing on a KT88 on the low end, possibly a KT120. I have not decided yet for sure which of those two. I think I can get that amount of wattage out of a KT88. I think they're rated for about 30 watts or something like that. So I think going Class A with that, I can get there. I believe I have the transformer I need already for it. I have to do some math on it. I have not done that math yet, but it looks like I have the power transformer that I need for it. Let me tell you, it is huge. Hey, the guitar guy, thank you for coming in and commenting. The great champ build of 2025. If only this were a champ, but yeah, I don't know. It would be cool to start a theme like that. Like, it would be nice if it wasn't just Andy and I. It would be really cool if we could get like a third person to kind of get in there. I mean, you always need like not necessarily the tiebreaker, but somebody to just mix the whole thing up, right? I think it's pretty clear between what Andy's talked about and what I've talked about what we're going to kind of do. So it'd be nice to have the third guy, or even a fourth or a fifth, that kind of comes in and has their little thing. Obviously, we haven't worked out details on how we're going to do the expose on these things or whatnot, but whatever. So that's coming up in the near future. I am going to do some higher gain amplifiers. I know everybody, that's kind of their thing. I'm really not a metal guy. It's interesting because I've owned a lot of metal, based amps. I've had 6505s. I had 2 of them, in fact. Gotten rid of both of those. I have a PV Triple X behind me currently, and the only reason I really kept that amp is because it's just always, it's done what I wanted it to do. It's not super it's not like a 6505. It's a little bit different. The clean channel is actually usable, etc., etc. And then I also have a JCA 50H, which is more or less like a Soldano Avenger, or whatever. Pile of crap amp. It's never quite worked right or sounded quite right. I used it for a while for live shows and whatnot, but I never quite gelled with it. Same with the 6505 that I had. I just never quite gelled with it. Tried doing some modifications and it just didn't do it for me. But, to each their own. So I got rid of the 6505. I am looking at gutting the JCA 50H and just using the components in it to use as like a, what would you call it? A platform to jump off of. So more or less, I'll just pull the whole circuit board out and fill all the holes with actual, like tube sockets and whatnot, and then do like a turret board style thing or whatnot, and just utilize the transformers in it or something like that. Maybe you just use it as a test bed for some of the higher gain stuff. I mean, I got 5 holes in there to use for 12AX7s or whatnot, so may as well. But in the nearest future, I am going to be turning into more of a wood shop than anything. Once this guy is built, it's woodworking mode. I need to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I will have to build 6, count them, 6 cabinets or shelves or whatever the heck you want to call them for different amplifiers that I have sitting around here. So I've got a lot of woodworking to do, a lot of Tolexing to do, and a lot of designing to do, because 2 of the designs there's 3. It's a real show now. You're welcome. Hey, what's up, Short Circuit? Hello to you as well. I have 3 different chassis sizes right now. I've got and they're all 17-inch wide, so that makes it one part of it easy. But I've got 2 that are 2.5 inch tall. I've got 1 that's 2 inches tall, and 2 that are 3 inches tall. So I've got some work to do. The Atlas, I did show that one more in its complete form somewhat recently, but right now it's just in a little cradle that I created, so I can move it around without worry of banging it up. So I got a lot of woodworking to do. That's all there is to it. Now, the thing for me is that the cabinetry is more difficult than actually building these things. Let me tell you what, building the amp is easy. For me, it's like if I have like a solid week of not having to worry about anything and I don't have to do any kind of like videography and whatnot, I can bang out an amp and have it playable within about a week's time. If I got all the parts, I can do that. High gain is super cool. I personally love okay. Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at too, though. I just never quite gelled with like the 6505 for me was just too, like, you put your finger down on the string and it was just like it just jumped off the board, and it's just too much. There was no feel to it whatsoever. It was like hyper compressed or something, right? The Soldano's kind of the same way. It's just a little wiry. It's just I don't know. The Soldano style amp that I have, the JCA 50H, it sounds like doo-doo, I am sure, compared to the real deal, but it has more of a feel to it, so it's a lot more fun to play, which is part of the reason why I kept it. But it doesn't sound right, so it's gotta go. But yeah, dude, the cabinetry, man, oh man. It's not that hard for me. I have a CNC machine, so I can, getting the box itself, stupid easy. It's all the other stuff. I don't like having removable front and back. I can't build the electronic, just the cabinet. I think you could. I think you can. You can do it. You can do it. It's the time-consuming part with these guys here is really just spending the time to make sure you use the tool to bend it. And literally all I do is I put the part on the thing. I didn't really show it in real time, but I lay the part across it, and then I found a spot where the tip of the thing would go and where it aligns with the turret, and you just kind of grab it right there. So you just hold the part above it, grab it right there, and then you just bend the part down, and then I lay the part so the leg goes the other direction, so it's lays on top, and then do the same thing to the other side. So it's not undoable. All the other stuff is whatever. I can tell you that I have done some soldering on this here. I don't know if I want to try to lift it up, but I soldered all the big capacitors in because I do have the RTV underneath these things to lock them into place. So they are, right now the RTV is just actually still drying. So I'm still working on that. Thank you, sir. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. I like to think it's beautiful. So most the Guitar Guy, you would probably actually like some of my current designs. They cabinetry, I've attempted 3. It's yeah. So I try to make I over-engineer it. That's my problem, right? But going backwards just a little bit, the Guitar Guy, you would probably actually like some of my designs. They're not high gain. They're slightly lower gain than perhaps like a Plexi would be, some of the older Marshall stuff. But they get about that level of distortion once you get it into that realm. Again, most of my amps are kind of right around the 25 to 30 watt range. So you can get them into breakup, and you get to output section saturation and all that. So going back to the cabinetry though, so like because I have the CNC machine, I can design it to within a gnat's ass. I put the box together. That's the easy part. But I over-engineer it. I don't like having removable front and backs, right? So I try to engineer it in such a way where either the back comes out as one whole piece, which means I need to have a way to make the rest of the thing more rigid. So I used to do it where I would put and you saw it on the Purple Hazel. I have the two. I should have had it called up ready to go, but I had the 2 pillars on the side, and what that did actually was cover up the other stanchions or whatever you want to call them that I had in the middle to help brace the cabinet and make it stronger, etc., etc. It also allowed me to run like electronicals and stuff through it because I do use lighting in my amplifiers. The reason I need these things to be hyper rigid is because I like to use mirrors in my amplifiers. So I use a mirror in the back panel. So I like it when you look in the amp and you see the mirror and you can see all the parts reflected and stuff. That part is the hard part because you can't have removable parts, or if they are removable, they have to be very rigid and strong, which means you have to find some other way to make the amp more, strong. But it makes the amp wider when I do it that way. And I want to get the amp down to like the 18-inch, 19-inch mark, which means I can't do those pillars anymore, which means I now have to integrate the back panel into the amp cabinet itself, which is going to really make my life hell because I know I'm not going to be able to do it easily and do the Tolexing around the back. I'm working out how to do it, and I keep racking my brain. So, yeah, don't steal my mirror idea. I'm lucky. The Guitar Guy, I feel like I spend a lot of time making sure that I do the math. Like, I try not to dig everybody into the math side of it. But you'll notice here I did put a resistor in the cathode, for the cathode here. It's a 200 ohm. It's just sitting in there for now because my math is saying that I should need about a 200 ohm. Well, I don't know for a fact that's what it's going to be. Part of that is because I don't know where my screen voltage is going to land at. I don't like too much of a drop on the screen. I like somewhere, right, the design process. Yeah, you just kind of do all the stuff, and you can kind of do the math, and then you have a pretty good idea where you're going to land. So I'm usually pretty close on the first shot. I generally err to the low side at first, so I probably should use a 250 ohm, but based on what I can tell, I think I'm going to land at 200. But some of that depends on where the screen voltage lands. As I was saying, I don't really like having it super disparaged, I don't know the word. Too much distance between them. So this one's going to use 6v6s, and it's how do you explain it? So the lower the screen voltage is compared to your plate voltage, the less wattage your amp is going to kind of overall produce, right? But you don't want to have the screen at the plate voltage. You want to have it at least a few volts below, preferably more. And the way I run my amps, you probably should run it down just a little bit more because it does kind of depend on more current from the cathode to run them that way. But it's a thing. And using the screen, you can kind of control. It's like a way to get away from this having to change this, right? Let's say that 200 ohms is too hot and 250 ohms is too cold. Well, there's really not an intermediate, one. It's not like they make a 230 ohm or something like that, or 210. It's pretty much those two, right? Well, if you can't work with either one of those, then what you can do is adjust the screen voltage up or down, so you can make it closer to plate voltage or distance it further away, and that will allow you to kind of eke in on the bias resistor that you have for that tube. So this one's using 6v6s, and I suspect my core voltage at the B plus node here will be at about 372 to 376. I think that's about where it's going to land, right in that range anyway, right around 370 volts anyway, which I believe after it's loaded down with two 6v6s, I should land right about 350 to 360 volts on the plates. And that's not cathode to plate, that is just directly from ground to the plate. So cathode to plate voltage should land at least at 350 to 340. I'm going to guess right in there. So my plate to cathode voltage I'm anticipating will be on the high end, probably 350, 355 to 340-ish or so, which really is kind of a safe spot. I think it's just spot on for 6v6s. And I like to bias to 95%. So this is a cathode biased amp, so it will be pretty hot at 95%. But because I'm using a slightly lower, not extremely low in comparison to some other amps, most of the guys are shooting right around 380 these days, if not 400 volts at the plates, which kind of, to me, I don't know. I don't like doing that. It's not my thing. So this one here, I suspect it should still plop out right around 18 watts, right in that realm, biased to 95%. And even biased at 95%, this thing it's not going to burn up the tubes. The tubes are going to last forever. I was recently checking out, there was something I read about car amplification, and that's CARR. He has this thing that's a method similar to me. He actually runs even lower voltages. I think he has one amp that he has down with EL34s down at like 280 volts on the plates. And he says that the tubes will last 20 years in it. And he's doing something similar to what I was doing, where he runs a lower than normal plate voltage, which depends highly on the cathode to do more of that work, right? So you end up with more cathode current as opposed to plate current, right? Same wattage. It's not an exchange in that regard. So you get the same amount of watts output. It's just how that tube runs. I think doing it that way, again, not quantifiable at the moment. I have to, find ways to quantify that. But I've talked about it a couple times in the last few videos. So I thank you. I'm glad that you think my amps sound good, the guitar guy. And again, going back to working on the first try is just, again, spending that time, making sure all the connections are right, and not just putting it together and slamming it together, right? Doing the math, making sure, you can pretty much get a good idea. These numbers here that I have are different from what my other build was that this was kind of based around. I went with more or less a standard value here. Instead of a 5K, I went with a 4.7K, so it's basically 5K. So I should have about the same amount of drop on the screen. So this one is the one I'm thinking is the most likely to change. It'll probably get changed out to a 1K. And then I am using 1K screen grids on each tube, so one on each tube, which, you know, a Tweed Deluxe does not do normally. So this one is very much subject to change. This one here I went with a lower value because in a normal 5E3, they have a 22K and it feeds both, you know, both tubes, right? So it feeds both those nodes with that one node. I'm using two separate nodes. So I have one for the cathode or cathodiene / driver tube and another node from this guy here that powers the, you know, the actual preamp tube. Which means that I'm going to have a larger voltage drop at the end of my string, which means to keep kind of the same voltage drop from here to here, you would have to lower these a little bit. So instead of a 22K, I went with I believe it's an 18K here. So it's not a huge difference. And then I went with a 10K here. Now, the reason I went with a 10K here is because, again, having only one tube on it, it's going to drop less voltage. So I only suspect I'm going to drop about 10 volts over that guy, thereabouts anyway. Whereas this one here is still feeding both nodes. So with 18K, it'll retain a little bit more voltage, not a whole heck of a lot. So it'll be similar in regards to what a normal, you know, 5E3 would have. It'll have a little bit more voltage at the cathode. Or not the cathode, excuse me, the plates of the cathodiene. But it'll help carry some of that voltage down the line. So this one here may change. I don't think I'm going to need to change this one. So if I know I need more voltage here to get where I want, this one will end up getting lowered to kind of split that difference a little bit more. So maybe I'll put a 10K as opposed to the 18. So I'll end up with a 10K here, a 10K there. And I suspect I'm going to end up with the 1.5, 1K, 1.5, possibly 2K in this position here, possibly a 10K there, and I know that this one's going to just stay at 10K. That's more than likely what's going to happen, but I'm going to shoot this way here to keep it closer to kind of the stock circuit. Okay, so short circuit, to answer your question. So 25 volt cathodes, you're probably not going to have that high of a voltage with 350 volts. It'll probably end up being closer to like 15 or 16 or something like that. Thereabouts. Now, let's say you do 500 volts on the plate. Your cathode current's going to go down because you have more plate voltage, right? So as you increase the plate voltage, it induces more plate current, right? That's where it starts to bias towards the amp on. I haven't really gone crazy like that to kind of determine how it would bias out. So obviously you would assume that the draw through the cathode would be more in a cathode biased amp. Obviously it would have to be to keep the bias in the same kind of realm. But I can't say it's going to go up like that. I highly doubt that you'll ever have like 175 volts. But let's say at 350 volts plate and you end up with like 15. I'm shooting for about 15 volts to drop across this guy here. That's the number I think I'm looking for. But if I go up to 500 volts, I'm not going to say that it would go up by, you know, that X percentage. It might go up to say 20 or 25, maybe 26 volts across that resistor. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't really messed with it quite that much. There are ways to kind of do reverse engineer it and work out the math on it, but it's hard to quantify, like I'm saying. Like when you use lower plate voltages, it does make the cathode of the tube do more work. And there's some conversation about how much electrons can actually boil off of the cathode of the tube. So you do have to remember that the cathode is what's supplying all the electrons that shoot, and literally they shoot at the speed of light towards the plate. So it's insane to think that There's literally an electron that boils off the plate and it shoots to the or off the cathode and shoots to the plate, at the speed of light that quick. And that the grid can control that flow of electrons that well and that easily. It's a pretty magical device when you think about it. But that's why you see the blue glow in output tubes generally. That blue glow is actually a little bit of gas that's not evacuated from the tube, so they didn't get a really good vacuum on it, or not enough of a vacuum. Oh, my battery's running low. Hold on. We got to change something. There. Now that'll shut it up. Dang it. Bashed my freaking finger or hand. Darn it. Anyway. So yeah, there has to be enough electrons to boil off for it to be effective. And if you've heard of grid conduction and stuff like that. So if you get too much grid current, which does happen, it's more or less all the electrons boiling off the cathode actually stick to the grid, because the grid has gone positive or not enough to actually glom onto them, and it just slows down the flow rate of those electrons. It gets weird. So another kind of plus side, if you will, to using a lower voltage on the plates is that generally they say you lower the headroom, right? And that's kind of true, kind of not, because the wattage kind of stays the same, but it has to do with the cathode voltage. That's kind of your bias point. So in this case here, I'm shooting for about 15 volts or 15 something like that, right? So anything that goes up 15 volts from my cathodion will actually start to induce distortion. Excuse me, goodness. My apologies. That was kind of rude, but I had to get it out. So anything that comes from the cathodion that's above 15 volts will actually start to cause distortion in the output tubes. Whereas if you go the other way with it, right, and you end up having, say, 26 volts across this thing, across the cathode or bias resistor, that means you need to have then 26 volts to actually start getting grid conduction or whatnot, or actual distortion out of the output tubes. So, hey, what's going on? Internet money, Mr. Team ATEC over there. Guns and Four Roses, right? Hell yeah. I got some bad news. I don't know if you watched the beginning of this. We've been going now for about almost 45 minutes. It just, one of the other gentlemen pointed it out to me, if this amp was going to be, for international use. If I'm not mistaken, you are in a third world country. I'm kidding. Obviously not a third world country, but you are in a different country. I don't know what your voltage is over there. And I was apologizing at the very beginning of this video because this amp is actually 110 or 120, excuse me. And I don't really have it set up in such a way where you could go to 220 or 240 or whatever the heck it is. So if you're in Europe or some other country that uses 200 and something volts, I don't know that this is going to work for you. So don't be mad at me. We're going to shoot me an email. We'll talk. Maybe there'll be a consolation prize. There are going to be more of these giveaways though. But now that I've actually got some people here, oh, did you rescind your thing? Now you're mad at me, huh? You're like, fucking Luke. So those of you who are new and haven't kind of gotten in here, oh, you're USA? Oh, okay. Well, not a problem. 120 volts, that's what it is for this guy. And to kind of get everybody up to speed, again, if you missed it earlier, I have done some work on this guy. I did do a little bit of soldering, and these guys are glued in place right now. I'm waiting for the RTV to okay, you have a USA. Okay. I did not know that. I thought you were in, like, Vietnam or something like that. I thought you were in one of those other... Who is it that Andy helped out that was in, like, South America or something like that? I can't remember off the top of my head. I thought it was you, but obviously I'm mistaken. I'm very, very close, though, No matter where I go, I'm still in the USA. Just got to use the post office instead of UPS. Oh, okay. Yeah, no worries. We'll make it work one way or another. Glad you still get to play in the game then, because I know that you were hot for teacher for this thing. So, I think tomorrow. Oh, okay. So it is USA for you still though. Technically, South Korea. Okay, that makes sense. And I obviously they run on 120 over there then. Okay, cool. So I did do a video today of this. I did some other work in the chassis. I had to do some jumpers. I had to do some the screen grids and stuff. And then on this one here, I had to do, put the RTV in and then, solder those things in. Tomorrow, I'm kind of debating whether or not I want to actually do not a live show, but like an actual recording, more or less in real time, where I show how I actually solder the rest of this up. So that is coming, but I suspect either tomorrow or Thursday I will have a video out. Thursday, my surprise arrives. Short Circuit, thank you for your patronage. You have a wonderful evening if that means that you're heading out. So, but there will be more of these. That's the big thing that I wanted to point out earlier in this video, is that there will be more of these giveaway style amps. I don't want to make it a habit because it is kind of costly. We were obviously, if you missed it, Mr. Team A-Tech there, Internet Money, John. If you missed it, I do need to start building cabinets for all these things, and I have 6 of them that I need to build. So I'm going to be a woodworker here pretty quick, but that's going to slow things down for a little bit, and then we'll go from there and see how things work out. But in either case, I kind of think we've wrapped everything up to where I wanted to get. It was kind of a slow roll on this video for people to kind of join in, and I do appreciate everybody for coming in and talking with me. I do appreciate that. So to sum everything up, I talked at the beginning about how this is a 120 volt amp, that I kind of biffed it and should have thought a little bit more ahead about who might be interested in this. I talked about how this channel, I kind of feel, or not this channel necessarily on its own, but channels like mine, Andy's, etc., I think are going to start to become more popular because they're one of the few and the proud, if you will, that are showing you how to do this stuff more or less in real time. And for those that are truly interested in it, if you're into psionic audio, Brad the Guitologist, and oh gosh, I can't, UK amp, I think it's UK Amp Guy or whatever, and there's another like Vintage Restorations or something like that. They're both UK. Dude, I think it's the guy from Vintage Restorations, or is it UK Amp Guy? Dude's a freaking shredder. But channels like that where they do mostly repair, if you're into those kind of channels, you're gonna really kind of, I think those types of people will start to gravitate towards this kind of stuff. It's not so much about repair on these channels. It's more about how to actually do the designing aspect of it. I think that's going to become a thing. That, and if you can get another channel like Andy's where you have like an all-day live show and it sort of loosely revolves around this, like, come on. It's classic. It's gold. It's TV gold. Right now he's doing a thing with Amber. He's playing a video game. He's like, well, you might as well just be on Twitch, right? So that's what I've been up to. John, Short Circuit. Well, there's a lot of Johns here. On my in progress amp, it's 600 volts. Ooh, okay. Okay. All right, do you have that video up? Like, do you have any kind of content out on that? I'll have to check it out. I'll go over to your channel here in a little bit. I want to think it's going to take off. I don't know. Another thing I chatted about a little bit was like the branding of my amplifier company, if you want to call it that. It's not a company yet. It's just I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But, um, I want to go with legacy amplification. That's kind of where I want to go. I have some friends and others saying don't because Steve Vai. Others are saying just go with Luke amplification. My name is Luke, so why not just carry the L with that and just go with Luke amplification? I don't want to use my name. It's just too personal. I kind of feel like it just doesn't mean anything. And everyone else out there is just using their first name. And then ATEC. Somebody already mentioned it. A couple people have mentioned, why don't you just use ATEC amps or something like that? But 600 drives the inverter. Yeah, that is a lot of voltage on the inverter. On the phase inverter, right? You're talking? Is it a 12AX7? Because 600 volts there, that's a lot. Generally, I think they're good up to like 300 volts. So you got to be careful with 12AX7s because there's a cathode to, or is it a plate to heater like difference? I know that there's a cathode to heater difference that you can run, but obviously when you start running that high of a voltage, you end up start stretching that out a little bit. So you end up needing to bias it a little bit differently. I would be interested in I want to say it's 400 volts or 500 volts that a 12AX7 is limited to, or it's its design max. I'd be careful with that. I don't think you could get 600 volts on a 12AX7 and expect it to live for very long. Typically they land right around 250 to on the high end. I think some of the Dumble stuff ended up right around 400 volts. To me, they start to sound weird when you get more and more voltage. Oh, okay, yeah. Raised heaters, yeah, you're gonna have to raise the heaters for sure in something like that. 6SN7, that is a 12AX7 style tube. It's an octal. So yeah, those ones I believe will handle all the way up to 500. They're basically power tubes in octal form that are meant to be in a preamp. They're crazy stuff. Is it the 6SJ7? That's the pentode version, if I'm not mistaken. And then they have a 6SL7 or something. I can't remember if it's the J or the L that's the pentode. And then they have a 6S5, I think it is. It's like a kind of like a single triode that's like low mu. So it's kind of like a 12AU7, if you will, or 12AT7 style thing or whatever. I don't know. Those octal tubes I haven't gotten into yet. I do have something about that though. I didn't really want to bring it up, but the build-off amp that I'm looking to do will be all octal. I'm kind of thinking I'm going to go with it'll be kind of a cascaded gain stage thing, but I want to do a cathode follower into the output tube. And I was talking about using like a KT88 or possibly a KT120. I don't think I'm going to need the KT120. I don't think I need to dissipate that much wattage. I know a KT88 will do 30 watts, and I'm shooting for about 20 to 25. But I want to use a cathode follower to drive the output tube. We'll talk more about that later. But I wanted to go all octal to do that. And the octal tubes do really good at that. I believe this, I don't know if it's a 6SN7. I think it is because that's what you're mentioning as being the inverter. So, yeah, very cool idea. Keep me informed on that. I'll check out your channel for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I need to come up with a name though. I don't really want to go with Luke. I don't really want to go with ATEC. I really kind of want to go with Legacy. But the rebranding side of things is going to be a kind of a brat and a half, but it is what it is. I don't, it's work. That's all it is, just freaking work. So I'm good at doing that. And here we are now, just talking, shooting shit. So, give me a holler if you want to keep going. Otherwise, I'm shooting to end this thing in about 5 minutes time, because we are at 55 minutes on the mark, in 3, 2, 1. Now it's 55 minutes on the mark. So in 5 minutes time, if I don't get any more interaction, I'm just going to call it. Hit up, it's on there. So if you can't, I learned that you cannot find my email if you use your phone, right? So if you go on your laptop and then you go to my channel and then you go to the About Me or Discover or, wherever that little 3-dot thing that says more, in that drop down there on my, landing page, if you want to call it that, my channel, you will see I do have an email address. Talk to, Team ATech, John. He will, I'm sure, be glad to help you. I don't know if he's going to want to help you try to win this amp, but he might help you get in touch with me. When it really comes down to it, it's all about the math. It's really what it is. It's just freaking math. There's nothing more about it than that. I try to keep the math out of it because, realistically speaking, as long as you stick with some sort of number that's in between the two extremes, you can't go wrong, right? Like, everything is using pretty standard parts. So as long as you use something that's pretty standard, it's going to work, right? It's when you start pushing the envelopes and getting really, really, really weird that things start to fall apart. Now, the only reason I'm pretty dang good at guesstimating where these things are going to be is A, just a little more experience, and then B, like I mentioned, I do some of the math. So there are ways to reverse engineer and kind of get a pretty good idea as to what's going to happen. You know what I mean? So like knowing that I'm going to need a 10K here for sure and possibly going to need to change these two are just, it's a, educated guess. I know what I should end up with, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's always going to happen. Not every tube is the same, and you just can't always you can't always know for a fact 100% what's going to happen. But you can be within a ballpark, and if your target voltage here is 370 volts and you're at 375 or at 365, that's nothing. That's not a big deal at all. Like 5 volts either way, that's just nothing. Now, if you were shooting for 370 volts and you ended up at 350 volts at that point, then I'd be a little bit more worried. That's a 20 volt swing, and that 20 volts is compounding down the road, right? So that means you may need to, A, adjust your dropping resistors to get the voltage further on down the line. Not yet. I have not gotten anything more done with that preamp pedal. It's kind of been sidelined to focus on this guy here. I sent it off with a friend of mine to check out for a little while. He likes it. He doesn't think I should change anything with it, but I'm not super happy with it. It works great. Don't get me wrong. It does the thing, but it doesn't do the thing. I should say it does a thing. It doesn't do the thing. So I am going to get a little more grit, a little more grind, a little more distortion out of it, if you will. I am going to find a way to tame the highs and make it a little more usable. And I am still going to figure out how to make the volume sweep. What's Mr. DJ Dross? What's going on? I am going to find a way to make the volume, the master volume on it a little more suitable. So, and then, of course, all of a sudden, you guys start coming in. But late to the party, bro. Welcome. Thank you for coming in. Hopefully you didn't have to run away from Andy's gameplay right now. He's killing people, I'm sure, in there. I never got into video games. I was late, so let's date myself a little bit here. I remember playing on as a kid, the original Atari, and I remember the release of Nintendo, like the very first Nintendo, and I was late to getting one. My parents couldn't afford one when I was a kid. And it wasn't until the following Christmas that me and my brother had to share our Nintendo. And because we didn't have a whole heck of a lot of money, we didn't have a whole heck of a lot of games to play. So I just never really progressed with my gameplay. Yeah, I'm not good at the first person shooter stuff. I'm just not that guy. I never got into the video game thing. I am a Gen X for the win. Let's go. I love to tease like millennials. The Zoomers, I get a kick out of Zoomers. Oh my god, the kids these days and the double talk that they have, and like some of the like their whole linguistic whatever. It intrigues me, and how the whole thing about them is just totally different. Um, it's so funny. Now, I used to do sound, as most of you probably know, and I've gotten to do a lot of seminars that talk specifically about, like the different generations and stuff like that. And they talked about, boomers, and they talked about Gen X, and they talked about millennials, and they were like, we don't really know anything about the Gen Z, or the Zoomers as they're now known as. But we don't really know much about them because at this time they hadn't actually even entered the job market yet. But now these little Zoomers, man, oh, they crack me up. Oh, they're so funny. Too cute sometimes. Some of the stuff they say, and you're just like, oh, it's a Zoomer. First year of Gen Z. All right. Hey, there's nothing wrong with it. I love them. Like, I get a kick out of it. I just love listening to how they talk. Now, some of them I've come across are very, like, they go all the way back to like Gen X. Like they want to be hippies, and, or even closer to boomers, if you will. But they want to, they're just older soul, right? But I find that there's some millennials you run into that are just straight up hardcore. Like, they follow every millennial idiom, or whatever you want to call it, that there is. And some of them are just straight up Gen X. Like, they're just hardcore Gen X. They want to start classifying my age as like a Zennial. Which is to say that I was right on the end of the Gen X era. I was born in 79, so I kind of missed it by 1 or 2, maybe 3 years or something like that. But they're kind of starting to call us Zennials, but I don't associate as a millennial at all. I'm a Gen X hardcore. Hardcore. Let's go. Born in the 80s. My brother, he was born in 83, 84, something like that. I'm only like 3 or 4 years older than him, 4 or 5 years older than him, or something like that. So yeah, he's different. He's in the Army, or no, excuse me, the Air Force still. In fact, he had that motherfucker got away with murder. I was beat to within an inch of my life for most things I did, but my brother, man, did the same dang thing. I was like, yeah, just don't do that, please. I was like, really? I got beat for that. So I don't know. Nowadays, I feel bad because you can't even look at a kid sideways. Yeah, right? No, don't say that you failed to teach. It's just harder to do it these days without having some sort of judgment, or, what do they call it? Getting canceled and stuff like that. Like, beating your kid, and I'd say beating your kid, but you know what I mean? Like spanking your kid in public now. What used to be normal when I was a kid, you freaking popped off and you got your card got pulled and your shit got spanked. Now you can't do that. Like, you got 5 people standing around you, shaming you, and being Karens or whatever, and it's just like, oh my god, really? So you have to find some like verbal judo, and it's all about nature or nurture. And I'm definitely on the nurture side of things. Like, I don't like having to physically touch somebody to get them to understand what I'm trying to get across to them, right? That makes sense. So, but how do you do that to somebody that will not listen to you and has learned, because children freaking learn how to play the game, man. Oh my God. Scream bloody murder and I get what I want every time. What are they going to do? They're going to freaking scream bloody murder. And then the stuff that's taught in school, if they could keep the politics out of it, and special interest, I wouldn't care. I feel bad for, I get it. Kids are confused. maybe because they just don't know, they don't understand, whatever it is. We don't need to be trying to complicate it for them by giving them something to wrap their head around. No, just let them be kids. If they didn't know, they wouldn't act any different. Like they'd just be, I don't know. It's the internet and the digital era, as you might call it, has really. I didn't even care about girls until at least my 5th grade year, and by then it was just like, girls are kind of cool. I'd like to, and then you get into high school and it's like, oh yeah, right? Like it didn't even dawn on me, but and that was like 5th grade. I know that there's kids now like in 2nd and 3rd and 4th grade that are already talking about their sexual preference and stuff. Like how the hell did they even know that? I didn't even think about it then. Like I didn't care what a girl was. I was just like, she's a girl. Girls are stupid. I don't know how we got on this topic, but we went there. I don't know. I feel like I'm pretty well grounded. I'm based, all right? I'm based. I'm also a little more traditional probably than most. My wife thinks I'm a chauvinist. I probably am, because, I really feel like Bish should make me a sandwich. Get in there and make me a sandwich. I really tried to have her as a stay-at-home wife. And she was down for that for a little while, but she didn't like the level, not control. It wasn't like I was like, you can't do anything or whatever. It's like I wanted her to have fun and enjoy time. But, we had a budget and there was a limit to how much fun she could have. And she was really, my wife, she can spend some money. Let me tell you, if you have a budget, she will spend it. Ask me how I know. And women are just good at doing that. And what is it? 80% of the women control 80% of the spending or something like that, I think is what the statistic is, which is to say that women dictate how 80% of the money is spent in this world, which is absolutely freaking nuts when you think about it. But that was definitely my wife to a T. So, I don't know. So she didn't like having to be reeled in a little bit like, hey, wife, I've been gone for 3 weeks and there's 3 bottles of ketchup in the pantry. I don't eat ketchup. Why do we have 3 bottles? Oh, it was on sale. So you spent $20 on 3 bottles of ketchup. Maybe it wasn't $20 then. Maybe it was $5, but still. So you spent all this money on ketchup, and there's only 2 people in this house that eat it. Me and our kid, right? Or her and our kid. And it was just like, that is a hell of a lot of ketchup. Like that's going to last us 10 years. How important is the first gain stage? It feels unimportant. So here's an interesting fact. I'm going to give you another secret that you probably don't care. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. There is no such thing as sag for the preamp, right? Once you get to the phase inverter, sag is no longer a thing. You could put an 80K, you could put a 100K dropping resistor there. It would not matter. It will not sag. There is so little current draw. We're talking about maybe 1.5 milliamp of current draw. Over that, like the voltage drop might be high, but all that voltage drop is going through the that resistor. It has nothing to do with the current demand, right? It's so little amount of current that you could literally get a 100-volt drop. And in fact, you get a 100-volt drop over most of the plate resistors in general. So if you think about it with the plate resistor, where you have say 250 volts here and maybe 200 on the plate there, that's a 50-volt drop over that resistor. Believe you me, there is no issue for the power supply to keep up with that. Period. There is no such thing as sag in the power supply for the preamp tubes. So the first gain stage is highly important because the voltage that is on the plate does dictate some of the feel. The higher the voltage, generally the more firm it feels. It also starts to get a little bit brighter. Some of that has to do with how tubes kind of work. Generally, the higher the voltage, the the lower the impedance, is that what it is, or the higher the impedance? I can't remember. But there's a correlation to the Miller effect and the internal impedances of the tube, and I want to say that it's higher impedance when you go higher in voltage, which makes it brighter because it changes how it interacts with the input going into it, right? So it tends to stay brighter. The way that it breaks up is different as well. So it will tend to break up a little more abruptly, not abruptly. It's like a harder edge, right? It's got a more of a grittiness to it. It's less warm, I guess is the term for it. And then going the other extreme, the lower the voltage, typically the darker it will sound because you are then, reducing obviously the impedance inside of there or increasing it. One of the two. I can't remember exactly which way it goes. But in either case, lowering the voltage makes it softer. Obviously, it lowers the headroom, so it distorts earlier. From on the input side of it, it causes it to distort sooner. But it also just has more of a bubbly kind of feel or a glue to it, if you will. Excuse me. It's hard to kind of quantify until you experiment with it. So going with the higher plate value or a higher plate value resistor, I should say, increases the gain out of the tube. And it's despite the voltage, right? So let's say you have 300 volts at this point here, and that's my plate resistor just to kind of clarify things. But let's say you have 300 volts there. You can put any value you want there. It doesn't matter what value it is. If the lower you go, the less output is going to go out of that stage. So if you put a 10K there, it's going to make noise. It's just not going to make a whole lot of noise because the voltage swing is too little for it to actually produce any voltage swing. Now, the input side of the tube is going to do what the input side of the tube does. So once it gets to the point where it'll cause distortion in that tube, it will distort. No biggie. Now, if you wanted, you could put a 500K there, right? You could do that. Now, it's going to sound starkly different, right? If you put a 10K there, it's going to probably sound a little bit darker. It's obviously going to have little or no output, etc., right? Whereas if you put a 500K, it might just be too abrupt. It might be too brash. It might be too much output, perhaps. Maybe you have zero control over it, and the tube just either spanks the other one too much, whatever it might be. It will change the feel, and it will change the sound. And same goes for the cathode of that tube. This is actually the bias resistor here, right? So that's the cathode resistor, which is the bias resistor. Again, going closer to zero, so lower in value, heats the tube up. It induces more current flow through the cathode, right? Well, there's a limitation to it. You can't just bridge the gap to zero, but putting a 470 ohm there, that's a thing you can do. It will change how the tube distorts based on the incoming signal. But it also changes how the output side of it works, and it'll skew it, with the standard values, let's say 100K and 1.5K. Those are kind of up the middle values, right? It's center bias. So a voltage this way and a voltage that way, a positive and a minus voltage is pretty well centered, and it will distort that tube. When it does distort, will kind of do symmetrical distortion. Whereas if you leave this at 100K and you drop that down to 10K or 39K, or I should say raise it up to 10K or 39K or 50K or something, right? You can go as high as you want, right? Well, it's going to lower the gain of the tube a lot, but it's also going to change the bias point. So if the center line is here and the floor is down here, this is still the center line, and that's still the peak. So you get this large swing that you can go one direction, but almost no swing that you can go the other way. And that will cause that tube to distort asymmetrically, which is to say that one side distorts all the time, whereas the other side does not. Again, that mostly depends on the incoming signal, but again, there's a limitation to it. Depending on how you do or where you do that at will depend on how it reacts the most. On the input tube, you are really, 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 really looking to maximize what you can get out of it. Because it is the most sensitive tube in the amp. It is doing the predominant amount of work. It is taking the lowest signal possible in the entirety of the amp, and it is amplifying it the most out of any other stage within the amp, right? So you're talking, what, a few millivolts, tens of millivolts or something like that going into that tube, and several volts. And in this case here, with the way I run it, I think a 500 millivolt signal coming in results in about 9 to 10 volts coming out of, a standard 12AX7 ran in parallel, right? So you get, half a volt coming in, maybe, and you get about 9 to 10 volts coming out, something like that. And that's max. That's the volume all the way up, all the way through. So that is a huge amount of gain coming out of there. So you kind of want to maximize it, which is why in most all amplifiers, the first stage is bypassed to some degree with a capacitor, be it a 0.068 or a 0.1 or a 10 UF, and I'm saying UF with the 0.068. So, right, all those different values, whatever it might be, they're usually bypassing it because they're trying to get as much gain out of that stage as they possibly can. Because beyond that point, anything else that you have is pretty much superfluous. Typical 12AX7, I think it only takes about 2 to 3 volts of input voltage, and it's going to start distorting, period. It's going to start distorting. So it's not improbable that by the time you get to the second stage, you're going to be able to get some amount of distortion out of it. Well, as you compound that, so you run it stage into stage into stage into stage, it's not hard to fathom where if you get 10 volts in on the input of that tube, that you can get 100 volts out on this other side of that triode, right? And then you got 100 volts going into the next stage after that. If you start compounding it, in theory, you could almost get to your B plus rails voltage coming out of the tube. Not going to happen. I'm just saying, in theory, you can kind of see how that would add up. You're never going to get 100 volts to go into a 12AX7 and have that thing hold together. It'll literally, the blocking distortion that happens would be just instantaneous, and it just wouldn't work. That's why they put all of those voltage divider networks in a lot of these circuits, where you see the 470 and the 470 that kind of tee off to each other. What that is doing is cutting the voltage in half. Well, if you have 10 volts at max going in or out of a tube, that means you've only got 5 volts max going into the next tube, right? And then, of course, you can add some more attenuation in there if you want to get it to fine tune how much possible gain goes into the next stage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, when you start limiting each stage down to a 10th or 100th of what it could potentially be, you can stage things to distort how you want them to. That's kind of the secret behind it. But I, honest to God, do believe that the first stage is the one that creates kind of the feel that you associate the amp to, how it feels under the fingers. When you put a 220K there, it's going to have more gain. It's going to have a little more snap and pop. It's going to have more compressed kind of feel to it. And you'll notice that a lot of high gain amps, the very first tube, what do? They put a 220K there. And they might not change the value of the cathode resistor that much. Maybe they'll go with a 2K or a 1.5 or a 1K. But, if you look at a Fender, it's usually like an 820 ohm or a 1K or a 1.5K, somewhere in that realm, and 100K on the plate. Like, all of them are just basically 100Ks on the plate. So that has to do with how it loads up. So to answer that question, why not have a resistor going to ground? That acts as a volume control. Literally, it does. And all you're doing is shunting signal away to ground, right? So signal comes in, and it sees this resistor, and it goes, oh, that's a path to ground. I'm going to go that way because it's the lowest resistance path, right? And then some of it goes onto the grid of the next tube. There is that. But the previous stage, let's say this stage here, and this is your following stage, This one here is loaded down by that resistor. So the closer to 0 you go with that resistor, the more it's going to drag that stage down. And it does affect how that stage will work or distort and all that fun stuff. So the closer to ground you get, the more prone to distorting it will be. Mainly because you're trying to make up the gain that you're going to lose from using that dropping resistor there. So you start pumping more volume in, and it causes it to distort, but it'll also get darker. There's a secondary problem to it as well, the coupling capacitor. There's a ratio that you can kind of go with. The lower the value of your sink, if you will, or your grid leak, the higher the value of your coupling cap that you need to use in order to maintain the same amount of bass. So does that make sense? It creates like an RC network, if you will, or a CR network, however you want to look at it, high cut, low cut, right? So with the coupling cap here and this resistor here as a sink or a grid leak, if you want to call it that, if this is very low in value, let's say values 100K and below, this will need to be larger to maintain the same amount of bass, as opposed to, say, this resistor being a 500K, you might be able to get away with, a smaller value resistor. And there's math that you can use to figure out what that corner frequency would be. So that's oftentimes why you will see a lot of amps. Even mine, I have one that's kind of does the same thing. I use 25 UF on the first tube because I want it to have all the gains. I want it to have as much as it can possibly have. And then I usually use a 500 PF. So this is a 500 PF right here. Extremely tiny. Like that's much, much smaller than most amplifiers, right? Aha. That's what this channel is about. That's what these channels are about. So Andy and I are doing these things that are giving away the secret. So keep around. There's always more to learn. It's general. It's, again, we're not going into the math, but that's just the correlation, right? That's what we're trying to put together. And then the way I do my bass cut, if you will, is that I have a normal size capacitor in parallel to it. Now, what happens when you put capacitors in parallel? They couple, or they combine in value. So in this case here, 500 PF with a 0.1, let's just say it's a 0.1, I would actually end up with a 0.15, right? Blake, how's it going? What's up? Real quick. I don't do anything real quick, by the way. If you already haven't noticed, I yap quite a bit. Oh, I don't know much about winding transformers, but go ahead and ask away. I might have an idea. I might be able to answer your question. I don't know. So kind of keeping on with where I was at until that question does pop up, but they combine, right? But when you run them in series, it actually goes down to the lowest value. So they combine in the other direction. So you end up with something that's slightly lower than 500 PF. But I'm trying to make my own transformers by taking apart old ones. Ooh, that's a tough one. That is math. That is literally 100% math, and it has to do with the turns ratio. So taking apart one and then just putting it together in another one, probably not the most quantifiable way to do things, or straightforward way to do things. Because if you're putting it in something that's even similar in size, you're going to end up pretty much the same as where you were. But it also has to do with like the core type of material that is in there. Sorry, it's going to take a moment to type out. But winding has to do with number of churns. That's it. It's literally the number of churns. And there's a way to do the math on it that if you have 10 churns on this side and 100 churns on this side, you're going to get X result, right? I don't know the math off the top of my head, but okay, you know the math behind it. So I'm waiting. I'm trying to hold it together here. So getting back to this again, that's how I do it. And again, the dropping resistor that you use will determine how much base from this part actually goes through. So that's why I use the larger values here, is to make sure that all the base that I can possibly have is there, and then I can use the remainder of the circuitry to tame that down, whittle it away. Okay. Oh, the economics of it? I don't know. So my kind of, I don't feel that transformers are really as expensive as they're made out to be. The reason that they're so expensive when you go to repair the amp is because all the other economics that go with it. You've got a bench fee. So it's $85 or whatever it is for your tech to look at the amp and determine what the problem is. Let's say that they determine after whatever, doing their assessment, that it's the output transformer, right? Now they're going to probably sit there and go, well, is it an easy fix or is it not, right? So they'll probably take a look at it and go, okay, I don't think they're that expensive though. I mean, $150 transformer, if you've got a $3,000 amp, that's nothing. So you're still spending all the money to figure out that it's a busted transformer though. 6P1Ps. Well, yeah, you can do that, but I mean, a set of transformers is nothing. Realistically speaking, it's nothing. It's just all the other stuff that goes with it. So, if your transformer goes bad and you know that's the transformer, you replace it with a $150 one. The problem is you spent $85 on the bench fee. You spend $150 plus markup to get the new transformer, plus the labor to have the tech put it in. Next thing you know, you've got $300 or $400 worth of work for an amp that's only worth $1,000. You spent half the money or half the value of the amp to fix it. So I don't know. I don't know that you can rewind. If your work is free, sure, yeah, you can do it all damn day. But to me, it's cheaper to just buy it. Buy the one that you want and need and go with it, because then you still have the potting of the transformer to do it right. You should be dipping it in varnish and stuff, right? I would just, to me, I don't know, unless you're into winding transformers for everybody on the planet, I just don't see it being a thing to do unless you want to just fiddle with it. With a cold cathode stage added. Yeah. EF80s, those are cool tubes. I don't know. I'm not into rewinding myself. Like, yeah, you can probably buy a used transformer cheap and then rewind it and make it work, and it'll cost you less than buying another one, but you only get one out of it. That's the only one you get, right? And old candles for potting. I don't know that wax works really well for transformers. They do get, at least power transformers for sure, they get pretty hot. Yeah, but why are you trying to sell an amp for $750 if you're going to put that amount of work into it, right? That's a kind of a reason I feel people that go out and buy these kits, it's like a $1,200 kit, and the actual amp itself costs $1,500 to buy. Well, they go out and they buy this $1,200 kit, and they spend way more than $300 worth of time to build it, and then they go and they put it on the market for half of what what it costs to build it. So not only did they lose all of the investment in time, they lost half the value of the investment in just the parts itself. Why are you building it if you're not going to keep it? Now, in the case here where you are trying to, beeswax is not a good potting material for transformers, though. I don't think they usually use varnish, and when I say varnish, it's kind of like like clear paint, but it's more like an oil-based kind of stuff. And then they stick it in there with a vacuum chamber or something like that, and then it hardens and it's more temperature stable. Because beeswax melts at a pretty low temperature. I know candle wax melts at a pretty low temperature. And you don't want the wax coming out when your transformer gets to 100 degrees C or whatever it is, because it will do it. It's mostly a power transformer thing. The output transformer is not so much of a big deal. They don't tend to run quite that hot. It's not that they don't. But dunking it in a varnish is generally the better way to go. Maybe back in the day that's what they used to use, but I think now you'd be hard pressed to find one that's dipped in wax. It's probably going to be a varnish or some other hard, like paint type material. But yeah, that's my experience with it. I'm not I don't build transformers. I just know what I end up purchasing is generally it's more or less just a paint like material. So my value in it is kind of like how much is your time worth and how much is my time worth might be two different things. 5 to 18 watt range. Yeah, I mean that's even cheaper still. I mean, you can buy a set of transformers for an 18 watt for probably $150 if you really wanted to. I don't know that you can buy a used set, rewind it, and do it for less than $150 in time, maybe $200 even on the high end. And yes, your work might actually be better than say even what Mercury Magnetics or whatever's putting out, where they sell them for $500. But I don't know. And then I kind of feel too, not to beat this one too much, but I don't know how careful you are, but the wire itself is coated in a coating, right? As you probably know. Well, now you got to remove it from an old part and then put it back onto another new part, or rewind it without breaking that coating. I feel like you're floating death. Not death, but you know what I mean. Tubes cost like $2 a pop. I don't know about that, man. $2 a pop, sure, you can buy all of them. Buy them all now, because you're gonna be the only guy that has them, and they'll be worth more later than putting them in an amp right now. I tell you that. The 6N2Ps, somebody else just bought a set of 10 and handed them off to another gentleman we talk about here, Andy Lederman, who just built an amp with that, with using those 6N2Ps. They're I just it's an EI. Okay, yeah. But you still have to wrap it. And that's the thing. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not trying to naysay. It's just I just know that repurposing is generally not something you do where you take it apart and then refabricate it. It's generally, hey, I got this transformer. Will it work in this other amp? Yay or nay, right? Most of the time, the answer is no, because most transformers are kind of specific to the job that they do. But I like, my time is important, and so I don't want to fiddle with anything I don't have to. Yeah, well, yeah, because the pinout's different on them. And they are essentially 12AX7s. It's like a Russian 12AX7, and they use a weird pinout or something like that. And I got into making pickups as well. I haven't showed it yet, but I actually have a pickup winding machine that I made. And it was literally because I could build the machine for less money than it cost to buy one. But making pickups is not fun for me. I did okay with it, but it's just, for me, the biggest pain in the ass of it is actually potting the damn things. I have like a little, like crock pot or whatever, and I put the beeswax mixed with some, candle wax in there, and I do my little thing. But it was like, winding it was kind of cool because you can kind of see how you're doing it, and you sit there and you count the things. I got a thing that counts up for me, yada yada. But I don't know. It's like when I sat there and did all the time on it, it was just like, dude, this thing took me 3 hours to make. There's no way I can sell this thing for $100, and make any money on it. Like the parts alone cost me $25. And by the time I spent 2 to 3 hours on the thing, this is like, no, I'm not gonna be building pickups and selling them for anybody. All right, now we're getting into my realm. Plate voltages, bang away on that one. I'm game on that. Hopefully we didn't scare everybody off. It's been an A-B conversation. That's cool. Short Circuit, DJ Duras, John, Team A-Tech, etc., etc. I hope you're all doing well. I did not forget about you guys. I'm here. No, I'm never going to be the best. I'm not going to claim to be the best either. Um, like they say, those who can't do teach. It's not that I can't do it. It's just I know that most people aren't going to sit there and spend the time to do the math on it. And I'm a good enough of a businessman to know the economics of something. And more or less, uh, if I can't pay someone else to do it and then resell it for more, then there's no point in doing it, right? And I learned that from doing sound for many years. It's like if I broke my leg and I couldn't do the gig, right? Let's say I had to give up the gig. If the money that I got from doing the gig itself couldn't afford to pay someone else to do the gig without, batting an eye, right? You know what I mean? But that's what I'm kind of relating it to his transformer thing was like, at what cost? At what cost? Like you buy a used part, it's cheap, yeah, but now you're investing time into reproducing something. And is that time actually more valuable or less valuable than just buying the part that you actually need to have someone else do it that mass produced it and banged it out for a tenth of the price? I don't know. But is the range of voltages I can feed into the circuit fairly large? Like a basic design calls for 420 volts. Yes. Very, very large window, in fact. No, I'm not actually in Los Angeles. I'm in the Santa Barbara area. But so a tube will work. I can't remember what voltage it is that they consider it to be in starved plate mode, but there is an operating range. I think it's sub 100 volts or something like that on the plate where they consider it to be starved plate. It works. It does the thing, right? It kind of still sounds like that tube would sound, but it's not necessarily, it's not necessarily operating the way that tube normally would. I would say that the range for the tube, if it's designed for 250 volts, that's its design center. Definitely don't go too low. And, definitely be mindful of the max ratings, right? Long Beach. Yeah, that's where my CIO is from, actually, for the company that I work for. He's a Long Beach area. Nice area, too. I did a gig out there for one of the, many, many years ago. It was the mayor or governor of the area. I can't remember. I think it was the mayor of Long Beach. I did sound for his, little party that he was doing. Cool city, beautiful area. I'm not a fan of large cities. I like where I'm at right now. It's pretty small. But, so yeah, getting back to the voltages. Yeah, there's a pretty large window, but do be mindful of the max voltages and just know that, if the design center is 250 volts, stick around 250 volts. You can't go wrong. The only difference in that point is how it kind of sounds and how it kind of feels, right? Again, as I was mentioning earlier, higher voltages tend towards a firmer feel, less spongy or less glue on the notes, and generally a little bit brighter. So it works differently with that. So to short circuit, so what you're saying, Long Beach isn't nice. I don't know about that, man. Come on, LBC, let's go. It's nicer than some areas. I'll tell you what. If you've seen some of the cities I've been to over the years, like Long Beach is pretty nice comparatively. I don't know if the homeless problem in downtown LA is as bad as it is in your area, but there are areas that are scare the hell out of me. I certainly don't belong there. Okay, so a voltage divider works a little bit differently. So you have an inline resistor, and then you have one to ground. Now, all it does is create a voltage divider that cuts the voltage by a certain percent. When they're both the same value, it's just half, right? So it's 50%. So whether you put 100K and 100K, doesn't matter. It's still half the voltage. But you're lowering the voltage even more just because, right? But it's still a 50-50 split. But that inline resistor helps. How do you explain it? the way it diverts the electron flow kind of makes it more manageable. So it also creates the relationship that we were talking about before. Oh, nice. Yeah, Sublime. I worked with a couple of those guys once before. And I also did some stuff once upon a time for Immelbus, which is, not exactly Sublime, but one of the more what's the word for it? Popular, like what would you call it? Tribute bands, Immelbus. But in any case, I live in Portland. Dude, Portland, I have a few friends that live there. It's a cool area. 20 per run and have a solid design. Right now it's just a hobby. Right now it's just a hobby. Have I built a number of amps? Yes. Have I sold some amps? The answer is again, yes. Am I trying to sell the amps? Again, yes. Not right now though. I don't have a storefront. I don't have a web page. I'm not set up in a way to mass produce anything. I'm getting to that point, but it's not like necessarily my goal. Right now, if I got more than 3 orders, you'd be on a wait list. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you'd be on a wait list with any more than 3 orders right now. If I get 1 order, I could pretty much say that it'd be about a 3-month wait before I could get all the parts, build the amp, and all that stuff, and get it back to you. So imagine 3 amps in that period of time. It just probably wouldn't happen. So if I got any more than 3 orders today, I would probably have to say that it would be at least several months before I could start adding more to my queue. I want to get to a point where I can dumb that down to maybe a month. So if I got one order, it would take 1 month to complete, but I could take 3 or 4 orders and still get them done in a month. But again, we're not talking about toys here either. Yeah, but I don't know that you can make money. So, what is the name of that company? Like Marley Amps or Marla? I think it's Marla Amps. They're out of the southern area somewhere. He's selling pretty basic amps for the most part, kind of like 5E3-ish, Princeton-ish type amps. Simpler designs, right? Not crazy, not channel switchers, etc., etc. But he's selling these things for $1,200. They are handmade. They are point-to-point. They're not as refined, maybe, perhaps, as my amps are particularly, but he's selling these things for a price that is, I can't even understand how the hell he does it. Like, there's no way he can possibly be freaking doing it and making money on it. Unless he's found some magical way to get these things banged out where he's got enough parts to get the cost, the raw parts cost down to well with under half of what he's selling it for. And then the time aspect, like, for me, like I say, it takes right now about 3 months to bang an amp out. Now, this part here, a couple days. Like, if I have nothing but time to devote to that, I can have a working amp within a week. It's building the chassis or the shell. That's the other part that's killing it for me. And I'm not selling an amp for $1,200. I can't even do it. The parts cost $1,200 just for all the raw parts. So, what's my time worth? I'm still not making any money on the time. So, yeah, $3 or $4 grand for an amp. Yeah, I'm making at least the parts portion of it back, and still enough to make my time worth it, I guess, or feel. I don't feel like I'm getting duped, at least anyway. But it's really, really difficult to sell something. I don't know, man. $70 in parts for the amp minus the cab. I don't know where you're getting your parts from. The resistors I use, these are about $1 a piece. All the capacitors I use, averaged out, it's probably $4 or $5 a pop. So when you've got 25, I didn't even do the count on the number of components on here, but there's at least 30 components average it out to $3 a pop, 3 times 30, 30, 60, 90. That's almost $100, literally $100 at least, just in parts sitting on this board. And factor in the turrets and the cost of the board itself, we're easily at $100 just sitting right there in parts. I don't use cheap parts. I don't like cheap parts, so I generally will spend money on them. But the chassis that I have, the chassis that I use, I should say, are basically $100 after shipping and stuff to my door. I still have to do all the work to drill them and all that fun stuff. So, if it takes me 3 hours to drill it, how much is my time worth? So your $100 chassis just now turned into a $200 chassis at least, right? And that's assuming I'm making $33 an hour. And then transformers for me, I mean, the transformers are not that cost prohibitive to me. $180, $200 power transformer and $150, or $100 output transformer, whatever. I don't care. It's not the money. So, and $8, man, I wish. I'm not doing that. I'm not buying things in bulk either. These F&Ts are at least $5 a pop after you average it out. These Zosos, again, about $5 a part, or $5 each after you average it out. This guy right here, this is a Zoso. This thing here is $13. Just that one capacitor right there is about $13. Right? And then the tubes, I use JJ's. They're not exactly expensive. Like this amp here, between the GZ34, the two 6V6s, and two 12AX7s, it's right around $100 all in, just in tubes. Cabinetry, like the Tolex. So my faceplates, the faceplate material that I use is $30 a sheet. And that one sheet is only good for about four plates, which is to say 2 amps. May the fourth be with you, right? Or live long and prosper. Is that what it is? I can't remember. But in either case, that's assuming I do not fuck it up, right? So it's not that that's a huge cost, but at $30 a sheet, you're not buying just one sheet. You're buying several sheets, so it's not cheap. It's not cheap. Plywood, the plywood's pretty cheap, honestly, comparatively. The Tolex costs more than the plywood to build the amp. I don't like oddball tubes. I don't like new old stock. I think it's a joke. The whole NOS thing, it might be, I don't know. I'm not trying to be a bespoke company. I'm not trying to be like, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to do cheap. That's the thing. I do not want cheap. I am building a lifelong product. Like, I'm not trying to make it as cheap as I possibly can. I'm trying to make it something that it's an investment for a lifetime. So yeah, it sucks because it's costly at $3,000. If I sold this thing for $1,200, I'd be losing my ass. I wouldn't even make the money on the parts. As I've already mentioned, you can already just see the math adding up. The Tolex is not cheap. Again, I'm buying a few yards at a time or whatnot, but Tolex is about $10 a yard or something like that, $13 a yard or more, and it takes about 2 yards to cover an amp. It's not. I don't think it's a different philosophy. It's just the goal. You have found a way that you can build something at a really, really affordable price. And that's great because, that's something more people are going to be interested in. But what is your margin on it? And I don't know what you value your time in or at. Like, if you can bang out 20 of these things in a day, that's great. Like, you can make all kinds of freaking money. But if it takes you 20 days to bang out 20 of these things and there's no markup or no margin in it, I don't know. That's like kind of what this whole Marla amp thing is they're making a hyper affordable hand built product. And I can't see how they can do it because, again, even just the raw parts cost as much as they're selling the thing for. And I'm not making $100 an hour. I guarantee you I'm not making $100 an hour. And I get paid pretty good at my day job to do what I do. So this still has to make sense for me. So that's why I don't cut corners, though. I don't want there to be any question whatsoever what's in this thing. They see F&T and they go, oh, it's F&T. They see Zoso, oh, it's Zoso. They see these Dale Vichy, resistors, and they go, oh, yeah, there's no question mark about what is in this thing. And just to even further clarify, I have a 200 ohm resistor there. It's a cheap pile of crap, it's a throwaway for me. That's a metal oxide. It's a piece of shit, but I can get 1,000,000 of those for nothing. This is actually what's going to end up in there, assuming that is the value I need. This is a freaking $12 part right here. This guy, $12 just for this one resistor. If that is the right value, this is what's going to go in there, right? So if I'm going to charge $3 or $4 for this thing and I can still make money on it, that's great. Like, I'm happy with that. And it's not a whole hell of a lot of money, but it's something. It's what is the word? Economical, I guess. But, I'm not going to be selling a whole lot of these things. I already know, like, I'm not going to have a line around the block of people that are like, I want that $3,000 amp. That's just not going to happen. I already know it. So I'm not worried about those types of people that don't want to spend that kind of money. Which also brings us around to this being a giveaway amp. I don't know if you caught that, Blake. This is a giveaway amp, so also keep that in mind too. And it's something I'm able to do, which is to build what would essentially be, easily an amp valued at $3 or $4 and give it away. I don't know if you've seen my other videos and kind of some of the work that I do. It's, you know what I mean? Why? Purpose. It's just purpose, right? I don't want to be, you know what I mean? Like, what's the word? I'm not talking about you. I'm not, using you as an example or what, you know what I mean? Like, your goal is different than mine, right? So you want to produce something that's affordable and attainable for most people, right? And I respect that. I love that. So that is great. I'm not necessarily trying to do that. I do not want to be associated with affordable or, attainable or, cheap, right? And I'm not saying you're cheap. I'm just saying that is not where I'm at. That's not what I'm trying to do. All I have ever owned in my entire life has been cheap shit, which is to say PCB crap that, if it lasts 10 years, I'm happy, right? I do not want to be associated to that. I want to make a lifetime product where I know that any part on this thing, if it fails, it was just, luck of the draw on that. Well, no, and I'm not trying to say you at all. I'm not trying to use you as an example either. So please understand, I'm not relating any of that thought process to you. I'm just, kind of trying to lay out like where I'm sitting in this world. And there's nothing wrong with cheap and affordable. Get you me, I buy things that are cheap. But it's for the purpose, right? Like I shop at Harbor Freight. But when there is a tool that I know I can't go without, I will spend, I don't care what it costs. If I need that freaking tool and it's worth it to me, I will spend that money. I don't care. So I don't even want to say it's a difference in opinion. It's just where our goals are situated. I initially, when I started doing this stuff, my goal was to do exactly what you're trying to do, which is make it affordable. Like I was shooting for about the $1,200 point. And I built the first couple amps, and 10 years ago when I started doing this stuff, it was semi-affordable. I think I got it down to about $800 all in is what I could build an amp for. And this is, again, like 10 or so years ago. about $800. And I was just like, dang, like even at that point, I'm really not making any money if I can get it out the door for $1,200. So I don't know. It just, I saw that. Hey Dan, how's it going, man? Hey, yes, you're catching one. Catching. Welcome to the party. So what was it? There was something that happened right around the pandemic, and the price of a particular amp went up like ridiculous amounts of money. I was blown away. I was like, "Oh, this is bullshit." Like bull crap. If they are able to freaking pull that kind of junk, then why am I even trying? And it was literally like a Fender amp or something like that, where it used to be like $600 or $700, and then all of a sudden it was like $1,400 or $1,500. It almost doubled in price, it seemed, but maybe it wasn't that drastic, but you know what I mean? And I was just like, oh, well, if they're going to sell this pile of junk for $1,500, then why the hell am I trying to sell this for $1,500? And then it was just like, it just turned me off entirely onto how to find a way to make these things as cheap as possible. It turned my focus into, I want to make the best possible freaking amp that I can with no excuses, no corners cut, and no arguments from, the buyer. Like there's just going to be no doubt in their mind what they got. And that's where it went. So yeah, I got a couple of these things out there, and I've got half a dozen of these things kind of stacked up. I think I've got 6 different designs right now, something like that. I have the Atlas. I've got the Rocket. It's not actually the Rocket. It's like the Red Rocket. I'm gonna call it the RR. I have my 18 watt. I've got the Sweet Little Sister. I got the Dirty Little Bastard. I've got what I'm currently just calling my 30 watt. And then I have, is there one more? Yeah, no, that's it. So 6 different designs right now. And at that point, I'm calling it for that particular series of amps. All of those 6 that I just named are all basically single channel, all output section distortion, etc., etc. Like there are no cascaded gain stages, nothing crazy like that. They're all cathode biased with the exception of one of them. None of them have negative feedback with the exception of one of them. And the one of them that has the no feedback, or has feedback, and fixed bias, etc., etc. Excuse, is in the same amp. That's the Red Rocket. So, right? Anybody can build it, yeah. So, what's the deal with the parallel preamp? So, imagine this. I like clean. Obviously, I spend a lot of money to make an amp that has no noise or very little noise comparatively. So when you parallel the preamp tube, you cut the noise in half. So any self noise that it would have, cuts in half. All the shot noise from the resistors cuts in half. And the all the other stuff cuts in half, right? It basically allows you to get just a little bit more output because you're taking 2 triodes and essentially combining them together. So you get just a little bit more than a standard triode would have with half the noise. So there's that. It does feel differently. So it has this different feel under the fingers, and it sounds different, right? It's a little bit thicker, and because, no tube is exactly alike, it kind of reacts differently. So it's just a thing. There are a couple other companies that do it. Matchless has a couple amps that do it. Mojave Ampworks, they're no longer in business, but they also used to do it quite a bit, and now I do it. So it's just a thing, right? So no negative feedback. Most of my amps are cathode biased, and I just don't like negative feedback. Negative feedback is an anti-dynamics kind of thing. It's basically trying to nuke or neuter your sound to linearize it. So it also adds to the noise floor because you're taking gain away. That means that in order to have the same relative volume out, you have to bring the volume up, which takes everything that was down here with it. So negative feedback generally causes more noise. It reduces dynamics to some degree because it's trying to linearize things. So I'm not a fan of that. And then, I'm not a fan of fixed bias. It's just a me thing. Fixed bias works kind of like how do you explain it? Like an expander in a way. So you start with a low bias that's above, let's say crossover distortion point, right? So 50, 60% at the very least, right? But, as you run the amp up hotter and hotter, which is to say you turn the volume up more and more, the bias heats up more and more, which means that as you play the amp louder and louder, it does get more efficient technically, but it's more efficient at the cost of burning your tubes up more. All right. And then of course it changes how it feels, it changes how it sounds, and all that kind of stuff, right? Like it just does that thing. Whereas cathode bias kind of works in the opposite direction. It actually kind of works like a compressor. So the louder you play, the more it cools the bias down. So you bias hotter at idle, which means at lower volumes, it has more dynamic range, it has more this, more that, and it sounds more like what you intend for it to sound. And then when you give it the big kerrang, it kind of shoots things down, it kind of compresses, and it does that thing, right? It feels under the fingers differently, that's all. I think for clean stuff, like cathode bias is honestly where it's at. Like the dynamic range that it has, the depth between the quietest quiet and the loudest loud is ginormous. You cannot do it with a fixed bias amp. And you can't do it with negative feedback either. When you have negative feedback, again, like I said, it's kind of an anti-dynamics thing. It does kind of suck some of that life out of it. And that's just a me thing. And going with the parallel triode coupled with that kind of output topology that I was talking about with cathode bias and no negative feedback, it just makes a clean channel that to me cannot be beat. It's clean, it's loud, it's huge, and it has this depth to it. Like you can literally swim in it. So, that's just me. I wouldn't say clear cleans. I would say larger than life cleans. My 18 watts kind of the flagship for that. It just, whatever it does for the cleans, it's on and you can't tell that it's on. So you can't hear any hiss. You can't hear that it's on. You can't hear anything. But then you play like this really, 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 really soft note and it's just there. You can hear it. It's bell. It's like, right? Like it's just there. You can hear it. And then when you snap on the string, it just ploinks right out at you. It just jutes off the fretboard. And then if you have any kind of delay and reverb, like everything, you can hear it just crystalline clear play through that amp. And it just has that feel to it. It's glorious, just freaking glorious. And you can't do it other ways. Ultra dynamic, yeah. To me, that's what it is. I like the dynamics. When I play really, really, really softly, I want it to barely come out, and when I give it the ploink, I want it to snap right at you. And most amps that have negative feedback in it, you just can't do it. You play really, really softly, and it still just sounds like it's jumping off the fretboard. Even though it is quieter, it doesn't. It's just quieter, but it doesn't have like the touch to it. I don't like it. So. I don't really have to fine tune all that much, I feel. Most of my amps are one stage directly into the phase inverter, and then that goes into the, the output section, or the, to the output tubes. So I got one amp design that's kind of a weird one, if you will. I call it the Atlas. It's an EF86 channel and a parallel triode channel that's run in parallel at all times. You can vary the volume of either channel, right? So you can use the EF86 channel to kind of get that more abusive punch if you want. But then you can also have the softer, more clean kind of 12AX7 parallel thing going on. But you can blend the two together too. So if the 12AX7 suits your boat here, but you want just something else kind of blended in with it, you can drag in the EF86 if you want. And it kind of sounds like a Marshall when you crank the gains. The way I do the master volumes on all my amps, it's all post phase inverter. So you get the phase inverter distortion kind of involved. Power amp distortion, yeah. And I don't know how well it presented in that video, but it was just like the objective behind it was to kind of show that there's really not that much of a difference, but there is. And if you imagine all the different amps that I showed in that one, mine are all output section distortion amps. There is no preamp involved in it. So even with that, Ignator Tweaker 15 that I was showing in there, it's not that it sounds like Dookie. It sounds great. It just doesn't do the same thing as my amps do, right? At least to me. And of course, doing it the way I was doing, like you can't play it, and it's really hard to quantify how it really reacts because you're not playing it. But to me, it's just the dynamic range is much, much better with my amps, and they tend to be a little bit quieter, less noise. So I don't know. It's hard to quantify. I need to do more like videos that actually show how these amps sound. It's just that they're not finished, and when I say not finished, they don't have the shells around them yet. And I don't like showing stuff that's not finished. That's a me thing. I'm part perfectionist, so that's another hard thing for me to do, like lower cost or lower value amps, is that I'm not gonna let things slide. And that takes time, and time costs money, and it just drives the cost up. So we have breached the 2-hour mark. I'm kind of blown away by that, but Short Circuit, just keep going, dude. You just have to keep going. Part of this channel is to try to, what do you call it? Get people to just do it, right? Like, not be afraid. So anybody can do what we're doing here. Now, how good you can do it is up to you. If you're going to spend the time to make everything look pretty and lay out, perfectly to within a gnat's ass, that's great. You can do that. That gentleman that was on Andy Lederman's channel the other day, his first build ever, and he made it look literally like a very, very clean, very, very professional job. For his first time doing it, that's great. And if it works without any problems the first time through, even more power to him. But it's just, you just have to do it, and you can't be afraid. And I think a lot of people are afraid to tell people to do something because of backlash. If I tell you to just dig in there and start working on an amp that was just unplugged or something like that, and somebody got hurt, well, obviously they would look at me and go, "You're a jerk, right? Why did you tell them to do that?" Well, obviously there's a sense of safety to it, but I think we kind of overstate the danger a little bit. When you take your iron, you're insulated with the plastic. Even if the amp was on and you touched it, you're going to know something went wrong because it's going to freaking, let you know with a bunch of sparks and whatever. But you're not going to get hurt. Like, it's just going to piss something off. Like, you might blow something up, right? Either your iron or, a component in there, right? Asking about building a Vibrochamp. Yes. Do it better than Mojotone. I do remember that. To be honest, I do remember that. Just, you can do it. And I remember that conversation. Just do it better than Mojotone did. You can absolutely. And built a 5-watt 66. Okay. Fuck yeah. Sounds glorious, right? Like, it's not, oh my God, how do I put it? there's no magic sauce to this. It's just a different variation, right? Like what I have as an idea is just different than someone else's idea. And it's all about niche, right? You're just trying to find this little space that you can fit in. If everybody did the same thing, then everybody would be buying the same damn amp, right? So the only thing is that this maker does it this way, this maker does it that way, and that guy does it this way, right? And between the three, you get this kind of mix of, everybody kind of gravitates to one of them, right? So I'm so stoked that you got something out of that. Hell yeah. Put some videos up, dude. If you have, link them to me, because I'd love to freaking hear it. I want to see that. So it's going to be. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up on some of the comments here. Short circuit, I'm super glad you're sticking with me here. I'm sorry to the missus. Let her know that we're having a deep conversation while enjoying some Four Roses. But going back around to the safety of things, this thing here is ESD rated and all that jazz. If, let's say, you unplug the amp and the capacitor's still hot, the second you... Darn it, it's got caught on something. But the second you touch that, it's going to spark. It's going to go, and it's going to unvolt itself really quick, and you're able to get in there and touch it, right? Like, a lot of people are scared to do stuff. The only time you need to be worried about what the hell you're doing in here, butane solder's nice. They're obviously much, much safer in that regard. They're just a pain in the butt. They're not as quick to react to temperature changes too. They're not as temperature stable, I guess is the term. But another way to go is those like what are those, E100s? Those ones that you can get off of like eBay that run off of a battery, but you can plug them into like a USB-C port or something like that. Those things are pretty cool. I own a couple of those. I don't use them for these things just because it's, I have a nice little station here, but yeah. Excuse me. Sorry. I got the burps. But yeah, the only time you really need to be afraid of an amp is when it's plugged in and on. And it's not so much it's touching things. Like, you should always have something that's isolated from yourself. So, if not, this isn't a great example, but something like this where it's highly isolated and you go and you touch things, it's not going to arc against you. The only time you'd be in danger is if you're actually touching the thing and you go bzz, and you're going to regret your decision really quickly. But it's getting the probe on the particular leads, when you're trying to use, like those little probes and whatnot, and they like to slip off all the damn time. But the ones that have the hooks are better. Obviously, for obvious reasons, because you can hook it on, but that still doesn't save you from anything. Most of the time, I usually use just one of the turrets or the chassis, and I set the ground on that one and leave it there. And if I'm trying to do relative voltages to ground, then I'm only using one hand in the amp anyway. And most of the time, even if you slip, it slips off of one and it hits the other, and oh my God, it's not that bad. Now, the only time when you end up with a problem is if you touch two together that should not be touched together. Then you end up with a light show. If you're quick, and it starts to go into thermal runaway, basically it starts arcing over, you just hit the power switch and you're good to go. I have not been shocked yet to a degree where I'd say it's something to be worried about. I'm not saying it's something you want to try to go in there and learn how to, learn to do. But these things really aren't as dangerous as everybody makes them out to be. I am going to do a video on how to do a biasing of these things, like get the bias right. There is a method that I prefer to use, and it does involve you getting two different voltages, which does require you to get voltages from different spots in the amp and touch two probes or two things on the tube sockets, if you will, at the same time. A little scary in that regard, but it's, what I mean? Like, you yourself are not touching anything. If you slip off and it touches something else, yeah, it might make a zap sound or something like that. It might be scary, but most of the time, you're not going to cause any permanent damage. You're not going to do anything that's going to hurt you. When was the last time you actually heard of a guy dying because he put his finger on the freaking thing? that many, exactly that many. I don't think there's ever been a story where a guy fucked up, had the amp on, and there's 400 volts there, right? Easily, 300 and something plus, and he goes, psst, and he dies, right? Nobody ever in their whole life. He's going to touch it, and he's going to get a jolt of his life. It's going to hurt. He's never going to do it again. He's certainly never going to want to do it again. And, he's going to live to tell another day. There's very low milliamps in here, right? So, yeah, it might be 400 volts in there, but it's, maybe a few milliamps, right? At most, right? And then you're talking about your finger and whatever it can conduct. So long as you're not touching two things at the same time and then you get locked in on it, I'd say you'd be all right. It's pretty hard to mess up. That's all I'm saying. And then again, and just using parts that are isolated in such that, if you do happen to touch it on accident, it's not the end of the world. You're gonna you'll see a zap and you'll yeah, I guess I probably should turn that thing off, huh? And or maybe you already did turn it off and it's just still devolting itself or whatever, discharging. That'll take care of the job real quick for you. By the time you go to touch it again, it'll have already finished all of that work. So, Dan, thank you for chiming in. Yeah, you need to post those clips, Dan. I want to hear it because that's a cool story. I love that, we had a conversation and I was able to kind of push you in a direction. Yeah, it is a rabbit hole. I mean, there's so many different ways to do the same thing. Realistically, there's a lot of different ways to do the same thing, but you ended up where you want and it sounds glorious. So that's great. Nicest sounding amp I've ever played. Hell yeah. So do post some clips or send them to me. You have my email, so send them to me too. That would be great. I didn't work on electric. So I learned how to play on electric or on acoustic, excuse me. I think as a player, it's best if you learn on acoustic because it teaches you how to be a better electric player. But I mean, realistically speaking, like if you want to play electric guitar, like there's only one way to do it. So you just got to get dirty. And I'm not a horrible player. I'm not the greatest player either, but I don't know. I've been doing it for 30 plus years now. So I got a lot of experience with different pieces of equipment over the years. And being a sound engineer, I've gotten to work with many, many different artists and many different talents over the years. So I'm spoiled in some regards because I have literally had real Dumbles on my stage. I have had these vintage amps galore. I've had Comets. I'm sure I've had a Trainwreck at some point. Probably didn't know it, but some sort of a Trainwreck perhaps. I know that I've seen 18-watt kit builds on my stage, and they sound great. Like there's just some amps that just kill it. A TENS machine. I got one of those too. But it's a TENS device, I should say. Dawn of the Shred. Oh my gosh, yeah. But you guys, I am tired. Short circuit. I want you to get some tonight, so I'm going to let you get back to your wife there before she wants to murder you or at least cut you out of the will or something like that. Drinking beer at 10:15. It's 10:15 where you're at. I want you to get in there and take care of, family first, as they say, right? My wife is actually out of town right now. I'm shocked I haven't gotten a phone call from her. She probably just knows that I'll call her when I'm ready. Blake, you can certainly talk to me anytime. I'm available. I'm a busy guy, but if you send me an email, go to my YouTube channel. My email is in there. It's on my homepage or whatever. It's in the about or discover or whatever. John with Team YDNA knows my thing as well, so you can message him and whatnot and find my data from there as well. I am able to be found on the interwebs. my company is Endeavor Music Productions. That was my sound company. So I'm out there. I'm gonna go to bed here pretty soon, but uh, yeah, it's been about 2 hours and 20 minutes. I'm about as four rows out as I can possibly get at this point in time, and yeah, totally, dude, totally, for sure, Blake. I appreciate your conversation. I hope you don't. I know you already said forgive and don't worry about it or whatever, but I just want you to understand. Our economics are just a little different. That's all. That's it. So yeah, I'm down to have a conversation. And then for the rest of you that may or may not still be here, Dan, Short Circuit, uh, DJ Dross was here for a bit, that guitar guy, all of you, I want to thank you so much for all your time and coming in. Team A-Tech, John, as I know him now. There's also John Shop. I haven't heard from him in a bit on here, but he was here earlier. So I just, thank you all so much for coming and hanging out with me and listening to me babble on and talk bullshit. So just thank you. So everybody, take care. We'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.